Good morning, happy spring. Please stand, join me for number 123, Spirit of Life. We'll sing through it twice.
Good morning. Welcome everyone to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. Good to have you guys back from Florida. Where we join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and live justly. I have a lot of fun with that. So we can blame Lynn for it because Lynn came to me some time ago and said, I think we should say live justly. I said, I like that. Let's do it. And some people thought it was a really good idea. And some didn't. But rather than engaging in church conflict and perhaps splitting over the matter, we just said, just say what you want. And I love the discordance every Sunday when I hear it, you know. So let's just keep doing that and feel good about it. Because that really is the heart of, I think, what our religion is about. That kind of tolerance and allotment for different voices and not trying to say what the right way to say things exactly is. And just that open-mindedness and acceptance. So I love the discordance. I think it represents us better than just saying it one way. And that goes with what I'm going to be talking about later too, as you shall hear. But for now, again, welcome to everybody. We begin by embracing all that you bring with you to this place, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs and background and lifestyle and experiences and differences, all that helps make you who you are is welcome here this morning. And that includes those in the room with us, whether you're regular attendees or joining us for the first time, you're equally as welcome. And of course, the many of you who are streaming with us this morning, we're always glad to know that you guys are with us as well. And I see Joe and Kelsey are back from Florida, first time since the winter break. So welcome back. And it's pretty nice weather. So for some of those who are streaming with us that are local and want to come and help fill some of these empty seats, come on. We'd love to have you. We'd love to see you. But we're also glad to know that you're there. So that was for Barbara. Barbara wanted me to do that. How was that, Barbara? A lot of people miss seeing you. So there's always a warm spot here in person and, of course, streaming with us as well. Okay. Happy Mother's Day. Yeah. And I think it's especially a important day for us at this time, given all that's going on in the world, because Mother's Day was really founded in response to initially the Civil War, in which the children of mothers were being lost. And mothers came out together, unified, to say we have to stop this. So Mother's Day really is rooted in the nurturing and sustenance of life that seems to demonstrate the maternal archetype, if you will, in our lives, in our societies, in our psyches. And remember, it wasn't Rodney King who first asked, can't we all just get along, right? It was Mom who said, quit fighting, right? You guys play nicely together. So that's the message we need today. And I've been particularly troubled by what I've seen going on in the nation, in this nation in particular, these past couple of weeks, where the children who are protesting on campus over what is fundamentally their concern for the thousands, tens of thousands of lives lost, particularly amongst Palestinians these past few months, being suddenly labeled as anti-Semitic, which is a technique we're using in our society today to shut people down, to instantly demonize, discredit them, and silence any conversation with that fast thinking, right? That heuristic thinking, where we find a heuristic to say, to boil things down, and it's lazy thinking. But it also demonizes our children, because for those of us who, have been around maybe 40 years or more, we recognize that we were still children when we were in our 20s, right? So not to belittle anyone who is a young adult, but that's the time in life where we gravitate towards idealism. Right? We have to find the ideals that are going to get us through life. We're out on our own. We're discovering new ideologies and philosophies in the world. We want to know what the truth is and how to get us there. And sometimes we cling to those in ways that we won't as we get older. But that's part of maturing, and we have to give our children that space. And in fact, what they're saying is a message we all need to hear. Right? It's not just that they're exploring, they're correct. Right? And I don't hear the people calling them anti-Semitic talking about the reality for the Palestinian people. And it's not a good one. And this is our children. This is Mom's kids that are being demonized in this way. And as a society, we need to remember that this isn't about sending cards merely to one person in our lives, but to valuing the meaning of nurturing and sustaining all lives. So, happy Mother's Day. Thank you. Thank you. I now want to actually invite Lynn Janishian, who is a mother in many ways for that very reason, because she too nurtures and sustains the health of those around her, including the health of this congregation. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about our generosity campaign.
I won't tell you that I also think we should change find meaning to make meaning. I whisper that every Sunday anyway. Oh my goodness. All right, I thought I'd take a couple of minutes this morning to update you on this year's generosity campaign and explain briefly our next steps in the budgeting process. First, while we didn't quite reach our lofty goal this year, it's important to celebrate the pledges that we did receive. By the close of our campaign, we had a promise to pledge from 115 pledging units for a total of very nearly $282,000 for our upcoming fiscal year. Your generosity from near and far, especially during these trying times in Unitarian Universalism, is inspiring. These pledges represent not just financial support, but a commitment and dedication to our values and to the future of this historical congregation. Moving forward, we take this as an opportunity to reevaluate our proposed budget and to possibly shift some priorities to ensure that we will continue to fulfill our mission effectively. The second budget summit will take place this week, where the Board of Trustees, the operations team, and the finance team, and a few others, will gather to make thoughtful decisions about where our resources can have the greatest impact, aligning our financial priorities with our values and aspirations as a community. Now that we have an idea of expected revenue from pledges, the Board of Trustees is charged with presenting a proposed budget to the congregation for a vote at our annual meeting. So please do save the date and plan to attend that important business meeting on Sunday, June 9th at 12:30 p.m. More information on that will be forthcoming. Lastly, I'll just add that even though the month-long generosity campaign has come to a close for this year, there is no deadline in joining to support this mission. Rest assured that this nourishing, liberal, religious home accepts pledges and donations from our members and friends all year long, and we are grateful for each and every one. Thank you again for your inspiring commitment to the coming year. We'll go into it together in the spirit of always moving onward and upward.
Thanks again, Lynn, to you and Rebecca and everyone who helped work on this year's generosity campaign, and of course to the generosity of everyone who has pledged for the year to help sustain our church. So appreciative. And $280,000 is not a small amount. That's a huge success, so we feel great about that. I'm going to invite you to greet one another for a few minutes, but first I want to get a temperature check. I'm roasting, but how are you? Is everybody okay? It may be, because I don't know if it's been set to air. You're fine? It's hot, okay. So I saw someone fanning themselves, so maybe while you're visiting with each other, I'll at least make sure the air is on and adjust. Once it's turned on, it adjusts accordingly, but it may be set to heat still, so. All right, so I'll fix that. How about you Floridians? Are you okay with that? If not, you can snuggle up with some people in a bigger row, okay? Please take a few moments to greet one another. We don't want to spoil the surprise.
Should I do it next when we
Sure. Oh, perfect. They had to get a sneak peek at the special guest for today, so. Okay, we're going to now light our chalice. Important part of our service to remind us of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone. You might be colder now that the air's on. And a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
This is not the happiest of Mother's Days, with families under assault in Gaza and Ukraine and women's reproductive rights threatened here in America. But it's a time to honor all the women who nurture our families and our society and reflect on how we can continue the work for a more just future. There's some solace in the words and life of the Reverend Jack Mendelson, a renowned Unitarian minister who died in 2012 at age 94. Mendelson was a civil rights leader, a supporter of the second wave of feminism, and an advisor to Adlai Stevenson on religious questions. He made headlines in 1967 when he conducted the Vietnam War Resistance Service at Arlington Street Church in Boston. He befriended Jesse Jackson and traveled with him to the Middle East to meet with Yasser Arafat in 1979. His most significant book, Being Liberal in an Illiberal Age, Why I Am a Unitarian Universalist, was written in 1964 when the country was battling over civil rights. At that time, Congress was moving to enact the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts over the objections of the right, while far-left activists sneered at liberals. Sound familiar? Here's Mendelssohn's ringing endorsement of our Unitarian faith. He calls on us to continue to be stalwarts, in his words, to defend liberalism. His words are as relevant today as they were 60 years ago. Human nature, he said, and its champions, liberalism, suffer these days from a wretched press. Those who would like nothing better than to take control of our lives are palpably encouraged that this is the best time for fastening on us their pet pieties, nostrums, and chains. But these will be fatal days for the liberal spirit only if this generation is without stalwarts who distill from the essence of the predicament the wonder of halting, imperfect, but coping solutions. I say unto you that Unitarian Universalism provides, not by any means an exclusive, but a special and inclusive place for such stalwarts. These many years of laboring in its vineyards have both chastened and deepened the pride I take in calling it the religion of my heart and mind.
Please stand, join me for number 1007 in the Teal hymnal, There's a River Flowing in My Soul.
We're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning, and begin, as we have been for some time now, on behalf of the people of Ukraine and Russia and that part of the world that are suffering from the unnecessary and brutal violence there, as well as the people of Israel and the Palestinian people who are suffering from the brutal and unnecessary violence there. And we kindle a candle on this Mother's Day, not only for the mothers in our lives, but for the children in our lives, children all over the world, and including the children on our college campuses who are finding their way and reminding us of our way. Let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others that you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion. And we now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which helps sustain this community and our mission to the larger world. Thank you all so much. And we'll now invite our children forward for our story for all ages, for anybody who wants to come up to the front. Yeah. Let's see who our special guest is today. Don't spill the beans. If you come up and get a sneak peek during our greeting, you can't spill the beans, right? Actually, you can't spill the beans because I'm not sure who this fellow is here. And I never forget a face, especially one with three eyes. So can you tell us your name? Not. You're not going to tell us your name. Why not? That is my name. I am not from North. You mean you're not from North, or you are not from North? I am not from North. Okay, so I see your name is actually Not, and you are from the planet Noth, so welcome to planet Earth. You're welcome. I see you haven't mastered the English language. I think what you mean to say is thank you. No, on Noth, we do the opposite of everything you do on Earth. I see, the opposite. Can you give us an example? You have 2 eyes, and I have 3. I'm not sure that 3 is the opposite of 2. The opposite of 2 is, I don't even know if 2 has an opposite. What is the opposite of 2? What, 1? -2. Don't be so negative. Come on now. Okay, let's get back to this. All right. So I guess I'm going to take your word for it that it's 3. And speaking of words, you do speak English very well for an alien. Is that your language too? No, we speak the opposite of English on my planet. The opposite of English. What does that sound like? Wow, I was not expecting that. That's an interesting language. So why is that the opposite of English, and what exactly did you just say? Nothing. That's what makes it the opposite of every other language. It's meaningless. Oh, now, I guess that is the opposite of language. For most people, intelligent life forms, please. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, intelligent life forms. I would imagine use language to communicate ideas. On my planet, we keep our ideas to ourselves. That's the way there are no disagreements or wars. Oh, I see. Well, living without war sounds good, but I would guess, I'd have to find another line of work on your planet since I make a living communicating ideas. On my planet, we have a vaccine to stop the spread of ideas. Wow, a vaccine to stop the spread of ideas. Does it have any negative side effects? I see, yeah. Okay, so on Earth, people have also tried to stop the spread of certain ideas, right? But some of them have been pretty good ideas. Name 2 good ideas. Why 2? It's the opposite of 1. I thought you said it's the opposite of 3. On Noth, every number is the opposite of every other number. Say a number, and I'll tell you its opposite. Make it a hard one. Okay, 1,200,876. 9. See, I told you. Okay. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Of course not. You're speaking to an alien that sounds like this. That's true. Anyway, back to some of the good ideas that have been forbidden. So about 500 years ago, an astronomer named Copernicus discovered that the sun is the center of the solar system, not the earth, and he was arrested and ordered to never say anything like that again. Exactly. And less than 100 years ago, the state of Tennessee took a school teacher named John Scopes to court to try to stop him from talking about evolution, the idea that the earth has evolved from lower life, or life on earth has evolved from lower life forms. Okay. And even today, there are people trying to ban books from schools and from libraries. That's 3 ideas. Well, I decided to say the opposite of 2. Now you're talking, yes. So the point is, we have to be able to talk to each other if we're going to work out our common problems together. Then I'm going to return to Noth and do the opposite of everyone else by talking about meaningful ideas. Hey, great Not from Noth. I hope that you'll come back in a few weeks and tell us how it went. Until then, as we like to say on my planet, thank you very much. We'll now squeak our children out. Good job.
As we prepare for meditation, I invite you to get comfortable, breathe deeply, and reflect on these words from our hymnal. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart.
Wow. I've got to follow that. That was actually pretty much the message today. Common denominators, right? And I love the playfulness of that song, reminding us of how silly it is to get in disputes over jargon. So I'm going to begin today by talking about The afternoon of June 21st, 2019. That's when I began giving my book, The Gadfly Papers, to fellow Unitarians during the Unitarian Universalist Association's annual General Assembly, which was taking place right here in Spokane. Within just a few hours, I was asked by its organizers not to return to the gathering, and within 24 hours, I was publicly condemned by hundreds of my colleagues as racist, homo and transphobic, ableist, and classist, in response to a book that none of them could have read, let alone fairly considered. And to this day, they've never lifted a sentence to corroborate any of these ridiculous claims. Within a month, I was censured by the UU Ministers Association for no specific reason, and fired as an adjunct professor without cause from Meadville Lombard Theological School, where I earned the Unitarian Seminary, I should say, where I earned my doctorate. And by the end of the year, my professional credentials were removed by the UUA's Ministerial Fellowship Committee. During the same year, the UUA sent 2 different teams to our church to help our congregation work through a crisis that it had helped manufacture in its relentless drive to force me out of the church and out of ministry. And some of their staff and top executives were unethically and secretly working with a handful of our own members who wanted to do the same, no matter what damage it did to our congregation. I was doing my best to hold myself and our congregation together at a time that was further complicated by the COVID lockdown, keeping us apart when we really needed to most be together. Those seeking to force me out had been people I knew and loved for nearly a decade, yet suddenly began demonizing and degrading me daily, tormenting me emotionally and psychologically, and verbally in ways contrary to what our tolerant religion is supposed to be about. A little more than a week after all of this began, I was scheduled to be the main speaker at the annual Freedom in the Arboretum event on July 4th. Not that I was in the mood to, but I was fulfilling my obligation. Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich was also present and was invited to open with a few words of his own. He spoke about the importance of not demonizing the people we disagree with, because he said, once you demonize them, then you think it's okay to dehumanize them. And once you dehumanize them, you feel justified in doing whatever you want to them. Given that what I was experiencing at the time, no words could possibly have seemed truer. But Sheriff Ozzie continued. For example, when I saw the name of a friend of mine in the paper last week being called a racist, I thought, man, if this guy's a racist, there's no hope for any of us. Is he talking about me, I wondered? He then turned to look me in the eyes, knowing right where I stood in the crowd of a few hundred. You know who you are, he said. You know what you're about. Don't let them stop you from being that person. You just keep doing what you know is right and being who you are. The first public support I received in the aftermath of the General Assembly as one of our city's most liberal figures was from one of its most conservative figures. I was a little surprised to hear the sheriff describe me as a friend. We'd publicly been at odds on some issues, including my effort to make it more difficult for the railroad to transport fossil fuels through our community. But a year or so earlier, I had traveled to Olympia in support of a young man, a black man, wishing to have his criminal record expunged. He'd committed a serious crime as a young adult while living in Chicago. But after serving his time, he wisely moved to Spokane to get away from his former environment and to turn his life around, which he did. He married, had children, went to Eastern Washington University and earned a PhD. But he couldn't get a job because of his record. The first time he asked, the courts denied his request because he showed up without any support. They didn't believe him because it appeared that nobody believed in him. But this time was different. His parents and his siblings flew in from Chicago, joining many of his friends, including me and Sheriff Ozzie. And the matter was scheduled to be addressed first thing that morning, but we ended up waiting until the end of the day. We spent the entire day there waiting to help him move on with his life. And Ozzie and I spoke with each other a bit during our hours leaning against the courthouse walls. And we impressed each other with our mutual compassion and commitment to the welfare of this young man. As you can imagine, being a top law enforcer, the sheriff's words of support were the deciding factor in the court's decision to grant this man's request. You know what you did that day. You know how far you traveled and the hours you spent to help that man, Ozzie said before the July 4th crowd, nobody knowing what he was referring to but me. You know what you're about. You just keep being yourself and do what you do no matter what they say. I knew and felt the personal pain behind his words. Although he and I sometimes differ on what the right thing to do is, Ozzie is committed to doing what he believes is right and good. And he experienced constant criticism and demonization for it. That was our common denominator, being dehumanized by some in the very communities we had devoted ourselves to serving. That was our bond of friendship. More than 2 years later, in November of 2022, I was contacted by Carl Tompkins, who asked me to meet with him over coffee to discuss the possibility of joining a group of interfaith leaders to work on issues of crime and homelessness in our community. Only 2 months earlier, Sheriff Ozzie had caused tremendous upset by announcing plans to raid and disperse Camp Hope, which had become the largest homeless encampment in the country. That plan got a lot of criticism and resistance from people on both sides of the political aisle, and in the end is something that he wisely did not follow through on. Instead, behind the scenes, he told the Citizens for a Safer Spokane, CSS, committee, a non-political group of civic leaders, that many of the systems which regulate crime, homelessness, and poverty in Spokane are ineffective, and that it was time to turn to our community's many faith leaders for suggestions and guidance. Right? Ozzie threw up his hands and said, I don't know what to do. We need your advice. Carl Tompkins, who has since become a dear friend, was then tasked with forming FBCS, the Faith-Based Committee of Spokane. All faith organizations were invited, although 9 chose to participate. During our coffee, Carl informed me that Sheriff Ozzie had told him, "You have to invite Todd Eckloff." I was excited about the idea, but I also wanted Carl to know exactly what he was asking by letting him know how extremely liberal I am and how different my religion is from most. Without hesitation, Carl, who is a conservative Christian, warmly responded, "Our group won't be the same without you, Todd." Again, try to imagine how this sentiment impacted me to be welcomed and wanted by those of a different religion and political persuasion, after having been ostracized and treated so disdainfully by so many in my own liberal religion. Our first meeting took place at 6 p.m. on December 8, 2022, during a snow and ice storm, the first of the season, that made our roads treacherous. But everyone on the newly formed committee showed up. Viet Lee of the Buddhist faith, Father Lucas Thompson of the Catholic faith, Vijay Anandandi of the Hindu and Sikh faith, Jennifer Hicks and Steve Matthews of LDS, the LDS Church, Carl Tompkins of the Protestant Christian faith, Ian and Linda Robertson of the Salvation Army, and Patty Marsh and Gerald Hager of the Seventh-day Adventists, along with Ivan Runchin of the Slavic faith, and yours truly of the Unitarian faith. Again, all faiths were invited, but these were the leaders who showed up. Everyone involved almost immediately bonded, maybe because it was so treacherous getting there. And during the meetings, usually twice a month or more, our interchanges and differing viewpoints were always greeted with the deepest care and respect. And given our diversity, we often disagreed, but never once were any of us disagreeable. For example, our very first task was to develop a code of life standards that every one of us and our various faith communities could agree upon. We ended up with a list of 32 standards that we held in common, that we shared in common. And that might seem like a lot for such a diverse group, and it is, but we had over 100 standards before whittling them down to just those that we could agree upon. In other words, we disagreed about how life ought to be lived more than we agreed. Yet we never let our differences get in the way of accomplishing our common task, nor prevent us from expressing the utmost respect for one another, nor from establishing the bonds of true friendship. For example, Carl, the chair of the committee, listed obedience as a standard for life that he felt sure that we'd all agree upon. And indeed, nobody initially disputed it. He spoke eloquently of his reasons for including it, and that it is a value that is clearly very dear to his heart. And it was still early in our process, and I wasn't sure how disagreements would be received, but I was not at all comfortable with obedience being listed as a standard for living. One of the key figures in my religion, Henry David Thoreau, wrote the book on civil disobedience, I said. And Unitarians believe that it is sometimes necessary to disobey those in authority in order to confront injustices. To my surprise, others soon agreed with me, as if they merely hadn't considered this point until I brought it up. Not that I have to have everything my way, I offered, but when those in my congregation look at this list, I want to be able to tell them that I did speak to my concerns. Nope, Carl interrupted. It's out of there. This list has to be based on our complete consensus. And just like that, despite his emotional attachment to obedience, it was gone, without need for further discussion and no hurt feelings or anger from anyone. Again, given what I've experienced from so many Unitarians in recent years who are supposed to be the most open-minded people of them all, I was not expecting to find that kind of acceptance from a conservative, Bible-believing Christian. As the months proceeded, I was often surprised by how much I do have in common with the other faith leaders involved. For example, I asked Father Lucas, the priest at St. Peter Church, Catholic Church, why working on such a committee was important to him. He immediately said one thing, one word: dignity. As Catholics, our first commitment is to human dignity. Wow, I thought, our first Unitarian principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. For us, when God became human through the incarnation of Christ, Father Lucas continued, he elevated the dignity of every person. So as Catholics, we serve our entire community, not just Catholics, because every person, Catholic or not, deserves a life of dignity. I was astonished to hear this and to realize that Father Lucas and I had joined the faith-based committee with its focus on criminal justice and homelessness for the same reason, because we both believe deeply that people ought to have dignity and to be treated as such and to be able to live as such. Our life standards are categorized into 3 areas of accountability: accountability to self, to family, and to society. And I'm not going to list all 32 of them here because that's going to be boring and take too much of our time. But I am going to make sure that our office sends out a church-wide email this week, hopefully as soon as tomorrow, that contains a digital copy of our committee's final proposal that was given to our civic and community leaders on these issues. Here, however, are just a few examples. Justice, honesty, ethics and morality, generosity, humility, dignity, courage, peace, mercy, equality, respect, liberty, and so forth. Nor do we have time to go into great detail about our proposal regarding crime and homelessness. Instead, I want to focus on those ideas contained therein that are, at least in part, my contributions and therefore representative of our contribution as the UU Church of Spokane. So the section on criminal justice begins by pointing out that nearly 70% of state tax dollars is allocated toward the criminal justice system, which involves between only 5 and 8% of our state's population. Reform is in order. Now, how many of you here remember the many sermons I've given where I've said this? All of you, thank you. Some of you do, thank you, that's great. Appreciate that. But that's an important talking point, right, when we talk about how much of our tax is going into criminal justice. And this proposal also states that the goal of our proposal is to reduce crime and have fewer incarcerations. We don't want to respond to everything with a hammer. Towards this end, I'm happy to have introduced the notion of restorative justice to the committee, the principles of which they eagerly embraced. And it's commingled under the general heading of loving accountability, but remains embodied in statements like the following. The criminal justice system should not only carry the appropriate degrees of retribution and punishment, but in the largest sense, be restorative. Loving accountability provides the avenue of developing self-worth and the spirit of loving accountability should exist within all legislative policies that pertain to criminal justice. The pertinent penalties prescribed by the law must be enforced absent any favoritism or unequal scales of measure. All people should be met with equal concern, respect, and treatment when encountering law enforcement and the judicial system, regardless of race, gender, economic status, religion, age, military service, or any other qualities of individual identity. It also states, as incarceration may play a necessary role in the rehabilitation process, the criminal justice system must undertake all necessary procedures to protect the quality of life conducive to people's health and wholeness as dignified human beings while in custody. And while expressing the need to support law enforcement, especially police officers called upon to respond to crimes, the proposal also recognizes that such support includes the fair assessment of law enforcement practices, holding all officers responsible for legal and appropriate behavior. And I cannot personally claim the authorship of these statements because, again, the proposal was a work of consensus, but I can take much credit for bringing these sentiments up to be considered. Homelessness is, of course, a very difficult matter to address, albeit one of the most serious issues of the day. It is as much a problem of scarce resources as anything else. Our committee agreed that the state of homelessness ought to be considered and treated, and I quote, an intolerable condition. This doesn't mean criminalizing it, nor does it mean giving away free houses. What it does mean is that no compassionate society can tolerate hundreds of thousands living with inadequate shelter, if at all. I tried to use my voice in particular to get away from the false narrative that homelessness is mainly caused by mental illness and drug addiction. I worked to remind the committee that there is a global housing shortage due to the rapid mass migration into the world cities, which has caused a housing shortage and rising prices that keep many hardworking and well-educated people out of the housing market and increasingly sleeping in their cars or living on the streets. The committee agreed that a great slogan should be, "Welcome to Spokane, a safe and clean community where everyone can live in dignity." Everyone. Even if the city can't provide enough housing, having people sleep on the streets cannot be tolerated, which means it is up to officials to establish locations away from populated neighborhoods and businesses that can be utilized as homeless shelters. And I brought up the idea that wherever they are established, it is also necessary that simultaneously we provide basic needs like water, restrooms, showers, beds, and security. People need to be safe under our care. In addition, the committee agreed that we must have adequate programs in place to help as many people as possible become self-reliant. The proposal states, FBCS recommends that our community leaders develop and deliver a plan that makes affordable housing available, that helps to meet the limited financial capability of retirees, the elderly, and low-income people. It's easier said than done, but we all agreed, no matter what our religion, that our common code of life standards cannot allow people to suffer the impacts and indignity of homelessness. Without going further into the proposal, which again you'll be able to see for yourself, and in addition to sending it out to our email list, we'll try to get it in this week's online Sun, the newsletter, so you can link it from there as well, okay, if you're streaming with us and don't get an email. So I want to begin to close by returning to the real theme of today's message, which is the importance of our common denominators. When I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, Interfaith Pass the Peace was the official interfaith organization, and it was one of the most successful such organizations I know of, because instead of spending its time trying to educate people about the many different religions, educating them, that is, about our differences, it worked on bringing people of various religions together to work on our common issues and challenges regardless of our differences. When I came to Spokane, this was not how the local interfaith organization worked. It was much more about bringing us together to hear and talk about our different beliefs. Boring. This, to me, is as boring as it is pointless, and I believe it's why Spokane's interfaith community has never been very successful. Most of us are satisfied with our chosen religions, right? We're grown-ups. Whether we inherited it from our families or chose our religion as adults, we're already aware of the many other faiths that abound and are free to further explore those anytime we wish. What we cannot do, however, is resolve our common challenges apart and alone. No matter our differences, many of our problems are the same, and none of them can be resolved unless we're all working together. There's a great verse in the Hebrew Scriptures in Amos that asks, can two people walk together without agreeing on the direction? The gridlock in our government today is caused by the almost absolute unwillingness of some very extreme Republicans who refuse to walk together with Democrats, even if it was their idea to begin with. As a result, neither party can get much done because they have not agreed what direction to take. Can two people walk together without agreeing about the direction? The success of the Faith-Based Committee of Spokane, by contrast, is because this diverse group of people came together to help resolve some of our community's common challenges, regardless of our individual beliefs. Some of our civic leaders were astonished by what we accomplished together in just a few months, especially given our diversity of beliefs. They're not accustomed to that. How do people with differing views work together? Sadly, when we publicly shared our final proposal with our civic leaders, only the Republicans showed up, including our former mayor, Nadine Woodward, but no officials from the progressive side of things came. No city council members, although they were all invited multiple times. Until our leaders understand that the only way for any of us to move forward with our common challenges is by working together, genuinely listening to each other with compassion and respect, then the challenges before us will all remain unresolved. This is true of our City Hall, of the United States Congress and Senate, of the United Nations. We have so many grand challenges before us, including global challenges, that cannot be overcome if we are cloistered into our small religions, our identity groups, our nationalities. We cannot make America great again without working to make the whole world great for the first time. Because today our greatest challenges are global. Whether the recommendations of the Faith-Based Committee of Spokane are followed or not, if nothing else, it has proven how much we can accomplish no matter our differences when we are willing to come together to focus on all that we do share in common. Our common denominators, our common challenges, our common values, and above all, our common humanity. Thank you.
Please stand, join me for We Shall Overcome, number 169.
As we depart today, I leave you with the original intentions of the first Mother's Day proponent, Julia Ward Howe, a pacifist who would be horrified that Mother's Day has largely shrunk to a Hallmark card. Let's honor all the female organizers in our church, our writers, our journalists, teachers, professors, religious leaders, doctors, and scientists in our midst, all of the women in our congregation. Let's remember that the labor of motherhood nurtures our communities, our nations, and our earth. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.